I make a TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 21, Jerry's Quest. And before anything else, I want to talk about the fact that I've been watching this show on DVD, and that's how I've been getting all my clips. And the reason I bring this up is on the DVD menu, this episode has a typo in it. They spelled Jerry's name wrong. But yeah, this episode is all about Jerry, to the point it's almost entirely on her POV. It's almost comparable to the episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the Zeppo, where we focus in on Xander the entire time, but with less craziness going on everywhere else. This episode's all about Jerry revealing that she actually wants to be a tamer and has her own Digimon cards. And her first choice is, of course, have Calamon as a partner, because who wouldn't want Calamon as a partner? And Jerry's got food, so maybe Calamon would be interested.
You like me? I like your food. I like you too. Then it's settled. Calamon, you and I are going to be partners. A what?
But then Leomon appears, in the greatest way ever. Leomon, this strong, muscular man of a lion, emerges from a rainbow, and then spends the entire rest of the episode running away from the idea of having a girl as a partner. Definitely no symbolism going on here. I completely forgot about how Leomon shows up, and this had me bursting out laughing. Although Leomon refuses to be Jerry's partner, he does feel bad for her when she's in tears, and so fights the Deva in part for her honor, which is kinda sweet. And because we're bringing this up, we gotta update the Deva list. There we go, we got a little rat in here. But there's still one little detail I want to call attention to in this episode, and that's when Jerry tries using Takado's Digivice to use cards on Leomon. And what's more interesting than the fact that this idea to use Takado's Digivice for Leomon didn't work is the fact that it didn't do anything to Gilmon. Which means in this moment we're establishing that it's not just that the Digivice is connected to the particular Digimon, it's that there's something to do with both the partner and the Digivice that connects to the Digimon. We see a similar thing established in an early episode of Digimon Adventure, but it's interesting to note that it remains true in Tamers. But that is it for this very Jerry-heavy episode. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to hit that follow button if you want to continue this Digimon adventure with me, and I'll see you next time. I'm making TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 22, The Boar Wars.
Go ahead, have a free sample. They're only $2.
This episode really feels like an episode meant to build anticipation for what's to come, more so than something that could at all stand on its own. It's a very quiet episode that is mostly the kids talking, learning a little bit about things, but not even all that much, before we get to the end where it seems like everything's about to go down. But one important thing they do know is something that I guess I've been semi-spoiling for the past while on these TikToks, and that's the idea that the Deva are all modeled after the Zodiac.
Mehiramon, tiger. Sendiramon, snake. Sinduramon, rooster. Pachiramon, sheep. Vajramon, ox. Kunbiramon, rat. Indramon, horse.
So we've still got to deal with a rabbit, a dragon, a monkey, a dog, and a pig.
And speaking of which, it's time to update our list. We got a piggy. Of course, there are a couple other things going on in here, such as learning that this weird kid that keeps popping up and is totally not a Digimon in any way seems to be after Calamon for some reason. And after all the times he spent spying on the kids in the fights defeating the Deva, it could be understandable. He has clearly noticed the same thing Takado has, that Calamon is important to Digivolving. And then on almost the opposite side of things, we have Impmon, who's hanging out alone in a sewer feeling sorry for himself, and it's sad. It's very much like, oh my god, the whole world hates me, but dude, you could have friends if you tried. Just please open up to anybody. But interesting in that respect is we have a digital field opened up around him, and he seems to be seeing this as the digital world calling for him to come back. The last thing I really want to touch on is the blue card situation, and what appears to be the natural evolution from when Kazu just made his own blue card and it worked. And that's the Tamers realizing if they just wish hard enough, they could turn any card into a blue card. There is something about dreams, hope, desire, wish that is all going into these things that is making their thoughts a reality. Once again, just like how Gilmon came to be, if you wish hard enough, things will happen with this. And building into why they're wishing so hard is, of course, the really sweet moments where they all think about their families and really worry about how the last time they spoke to members of their family, it was heated or sad in a way with each of them. But the episode ends on a big cliffhanger. We have all the Ultimate Digimon about to take on this big pig, and Juggernaut's about to be going off again to potentially delete both this Deva and all of the Ultimates, and we're just stuck waiting to see what's going to happen next. If you've enjoyed this, be sure to hit that follow button and continue this Digimon journey with me, and I'll see you next time. I'm Mickey at TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 23, A World Apart. There is so much in this episode that I'm just going to kind of shoot through a good chunk of it. Such as, hey, we found out that weird screeching kid has been a monkey all along, never could have saw this coming, let's add him to the Deva list. When we find this out, we find out he is targeting Calamon and actually manages to get him and steal him away to take him to the digital world. Speaking of going to the digital world, it looks like Impmon's going there too. We see him again, still struggling after his last fight and being promised that if he goes to the digital world, he'll get to Digivolve. Hypnos is destroyed because they tried to activate Juggernaut again, and God, stop doing this, it never goes well. Oh yeah, and Leomon returns and Jerry gets a Digivice. And now I can finally take a breath and slow down, because let's talk about the things I really want to talk about outside of like the major plot things. Alright, starting with continuing on the idea of belief and the power of belief, dreams, all these things going on in this world. When Henry has the idea that when they run out of cards, they could just swipe anything. It doesn't matter what the card is. What matters is how much they believe in themselves and presumably also their Digimon.
The only time the cards have been helpful to our Digimon is when we've believed in them. All we have to do is just believe in ourselves this time.
Okay, it's worth a try.
So when they run out of cards, when they run out of power, when it looks like they're going to lose, Rika and Henry swipe seemingly random cards which become something else and up the power of both Rapidmon and Taomon. And now let's talk about Takato and Wargrowlmon. Starting with Takato voicing some concerns that he hasn't really talked about for a while, and that's the idea that he feels like Gilmon is less and less himself the more he digivolves.
When Gilmon digivolves, a part of him seems to disappear. Sometimes I don't even recognize him. I can't believe how serious things have become. I'm glad that he's powerful, but I'm afraid of losing our friendship.
And it's really hitting the obvious metaphor of the digivolving as growing up, as getting older. Because Gilmon is such a baby, and he seems to get more serious as he digivolves. Takato is worried that he is losing his friend, the child version of Gilmon. And I only talk about the dubs because that's what I watch, but it's worth bringing in the subs here, just to mention the fact that in the Japanese versions, what we call rookie is called child, and what we call champion, they call adult. Like, it is much more a direct metaphor for growing up. But Rika knows about friendship now, so she is the first one to pipe up and say,
You're not losing anything, Gogglehead.
Huh?
Everyone has to grow up sometime, it's natural. Talmon could be the most powerful Digimon ever, but she's still my best friend.
Really?
Besides, he's still just a bread-snarfing doofus on the inside.
Well, that's true.
And then let's look at how they actually win the fight with the pig, and how much this is about the connection between Wargrowlmon and Takato. Because Wargrowlmon's been stuck on the ground under a plasma egg of some sort, I don't know what else to call it, for almost the entire episode. But as soon as Takato really syncs up with Wargrowlmon and starts letting out this feral guttural scream, the same way that Wargrowlmon does as he exerts energy, well, they are connected, they are united, and Wargrowlmon is powered up. As Wargrowlmon takes on the pig, starts grappling him and everything, Takato is mimicking the movements. They are one in this. And it is when they are one, they are the most powerful. They win the fight, but we got more things in store because guess what?
We have to go to the digital world. It's the only way to save him.
But that's it for me today. Be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed any of this. Help the algorithm show this to more people. Comment just any gibberish. It would be fantastic. And I'll see you next time. I'm Mickey at TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 24, The Journey Begins. Guys, this episode was just all the feeling, just all the feels throughout the entire thing. We got no fights or anything in this. It is just about the children saying goodbye to their families, and in Takato and his classmates' case, saying goodbye to their teacher. And going along with this is also the reveal of the Digimon to their families, where Henry reveals to his sister that Terriermon's been alive all along, where Takato introduces his family to Gilmon, where, by accident, but still, Rika introduces Renamon to her grandmother. And then sticking with Rika for a moment, we even have Rika putting on a dress to try to make her mother happy. I think we could really look at a lot of these moments and compare them to what was going through the children's minds about 2 episodes ago at the end of the episode when they thought they were going to die to the big pig Deva. Their final thoughts before they ended up using their own hope, their own wish to make the blue cards was about all the ways that they kind of ended things badly with their family. And this is making up for it. This is them saying, no, we won't leave that way again. We are going to make sure our parents actually know we love them before we go.
I just hope I live up to being your partner.
Huh?
Sometimes I think I'm not good enough.
Huh? You're such a little thing, but you have a lion's heart.
Well, that's why we're perfect for each other.
But let's talk about Yamaki and the removing of the glasses again. This is something I brought up back in episode 14. How him taking off his glasses is kind of symbolism for him becoming more human, becoming less of this evil dark figure. And it goes a couple steps further in this episode where, one, he's also removing his jacket. The costume is changing. We're seeing him as a different person here in a physical appearance kind of way. And going along with this, he's actually doing something good for the children here. We see that he's made a device so they could talk to him while they're in the digital world. He is offering to be their support. Now that Hypnos is gone, he has nothing keeping him tied to these ways of destroying all the Digimon like this, and he's actually being helpful for the children, their best hope at beating the evil Digimon. And something that's just so much fun, the gateway to the digital world, being in a hole Gilmon dug in his little hideout is amazing. He started digging holes in there in, I think it was episode 2, maybe episode 3 of the series, and the fact that this has coincidentally been where a portal's gonna be is fantastic. I love it. While we're not quite halfway through the series yet, this is kind of a transitional episode between the first half and second half, and the fact that they're going to the digital world for the first time, 24 episodes in, it could only mean great things. But that's it for this episode of Digimon Tamers. Be sure to click that follow button if you want to continue this Digimon adventure with me, and I will see you next time. I'm making a TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 25, Brave New Digital World. And as the name might suggest, this is an episode mostly focused on setting up what the digital world is like, setting the stakes for this place and just how dangerous it could be. One of the first things we see after getting to this world are these huge beams of light that are explained to be data going from this world to the human world.
What are they, do you think?
They must be streams of data being transferred between our world and this one. Anytime you use a computer, I bet it sends one of those beams to extract the information from down here.
Which is a really cool little bit of lore there, the explanation for this connectivity between the digital world and human worlds. How the digital world isn't fully on its own, but is being accessed anytime anyone in the human world is doing probably anything on a computer whatsoever. And then we see how brutal this place could be when a pack of these adorable little potatoes, these Jogamon, actually run over Meramon and kill him immediately. This is all being shown to be very normal for this world.
We only wanted to protect ourselves.
You heard him.
I think Meramon was trying to take over their territory, Rika.
I'm sorry, we didn't mean to hurt him. He's sorry, see?
And on top of all this, all the Tamers' digital tools don't work here, at least not while they're close to these beams, is what they're guessing right now. And that means the communication device that Yamaki just gave them in the last episode is currently useless. So much for him trying to help. But over on the Kalamon side of things, he just gets to the digital world and kinda gets stuck at the opening. Which actually works out really well for him because somehow this means Makuramon loses him. Makuramon gets his hands like zapped or something and falls, dropping Kalamon's cage. Leaving Kalamon alone, he's safe and even making some new friends. And while they barely come into play, it's worth noting that we're seeing another Deva here. We got the dragon. But you know, the most important thing in this episode might be the way we see Terriermon sleep. This is so adorable! But that's really all I have to say about this episode. It's mostly just about establishing the digital world more so than anything else. So that's going to be it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hit that follow button if you want to continue this Digimon adventure with me, and I'll see you next time. I'm making a TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 26, Kazu and Kenta's Excellent Adventure. A name clearly inspired by Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and that's not the only movie reference going on here. Supposedly, Jijimon and Babamon's attitudes were inspired by the characters of The Princess Bride, Miracle Max, and Valerie, which really feels like it checks out.
Happily married for 40 years, and not so happily for 10 after that.
Don't listen to this coot. He just likes to hear himself talk. Lock the door already!
This episode gives us some interesting tidbits about how the digital world is situated around the human world, because in the previous episode, we saw that the human world was almost taking up the entire sky. It looked like the digital world might even be like a dome around the human world in a sense. But in this episode, we're seeing that the human world is really far away. It looks more like it could be just the moon in the sky versus something that is covering the entire sky, which is giving us a very different vibe as to how this whole world works, especially when we just see Kazu, Kenta, and Rika just falling for so long to get to this new point.
Is that what I think it is?
Yes, planet Earth.
But it's so far away. What if we can't ever get back?
The world has changed since I left. Look at how barren it's become.
This is a much smaller episode. Rika, Renamon, Kazu, and Kenta are stuck inside a house during a windstorm, and Kazu and Kenta think maybe Digimon and Babamon could be their Digimon. Of course, that goes awry, and as Kazu and Kenta are explaining what this partnership would be like, they somehow end up taking on the roles of the Digimon themselves. We're seeing their first attempts to do exactly what Jerry did, of finding a Digimon and just saying, you could be our partner. But that's pretty much it for this episode. It's a pretty chill, more self-contained story of just these few characters mostly just being in a house together. If you enjoyed this, be sure to hit that follow button to continue this Digimon adventure with me, and I will see you guys next time. I make a TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 27, Motorcycle Madness. And there is so much to talk about with this one. First, let's start with some real small things with Takato and his gang over at the village, where we're seeing something we don't really ever see in Digimon. A whole village of the same Digimon, but of all different sizes and even different facial features on one. Usually when we see a whole group of Digimon, it's just a whole group of the same looking Digimon. So the fact that they're making it so they have like a child size and everything is really interesting. But this village is being harassed by a motorcycle. Now this motorcycle's name is Behemoth, a name that comes from the biblical book of Job and is this unbelievably strong chaos monster essentially. While the name is a direct one-for-one to this, I want to call attention to something else it might be. Just because Digimon Tamers has been so high on the H.P. Lovecraft references, I want to bring up the character of Behemoth. Behemoth is like the Lovecraft equivalent of Behemoth, and because it's a slightly different name here, we can say that it might be too big of a leap to say that this is supposed to be more of a reference to that, but it's worth bringing up anyway. A key fact of Behemoth is how they control others with their psychic power, and this is essentially what we're seeing here with this motorcycle, where whoever the rider is being essentially psychically controlled. What I especially love with this whole story with Behemoth in this village is how Henry's reacting to the whole thing. How Takato's bringing up these ideas that the Digimon should just move and find somewhere safer to be, and when they're saying we don't want to, we live here, Henry's the one bringing up the point of like, these are different people from a different world, we should not just tell them what they're supposed to do.
Look, Takato, these guys have their own way of doing things. I don't think that we as outsiders should tell them what to do. They don't want to move, so don't push it. I mean, it is their decision after all.
But of course, the real big thing for this episode is Impmon's story. Starting off very quickly, we got the dog Deva, let's update the list. But here we also get the first 100% confirmation that Impmon really does care about these two children.
Wait a minute. This is my old house. Hey, guess who's back?
I love the way they've been slowly doling out the information of these children. First, we see just a little clip that might be his imagination or might be a memory. Then we see him accidentally drop that he used to have a human partner. Now we're seeing this, that is really him interacting with them, or at least trying to, in a way that says, yes, he was theirs. But Katoramon is using this whole vision to show Impmon how replaceable he was to the humans. And I really want to point out the little bit of bias in the fact that he is showing Impmon how replaceable he is when the children were given a dog and he is the dog Deva. He's basically rubbing it in his face that dogs are better than him, which is great coming from a dog. Impmon's told he could digivolve if he goes up against the Tamers, and here we actually have him admit he likes these people too. He doesn't want to do it, but in the end he decides power is more important, so he'll do the thing he does not want to do if it means it'll make him digivolve. We have him falling into a pit of lava, Behemoth falling into a pit of lava, and both Beelzemon and Behemoth coming out. I gotta talk about Beelzemon and his name, especially since we were already talking about Behemoth. Beelzemon is of course a reference to Beelzebub from, again, the Bible. He is one of the 7 princes of hell, and if you don't know, one of the key things with the 7 princes of hell is they are each representative of one of the 7 deadly sins. In Beelzebub's case, it is greed. Now, while there's potentially an argument for Impmon fitting in with this sin of greed, I want to bring up another possibility that I think wouldn't have fit the look as much with Beelzebub, but I think could have fit some of the more thematic things going on here better. And that's if they named him after Leviathan. Now, Leviathan is again one of the 7 princes of hell, but he is representative of envy, and that is clearly Impmon's biggest fault. Not only that, but Leviathan is often paired with Behemoth in the Bible, and so that could have all flowed so well together. Not that there's any problem in them not going all the way with these names, but I thought it was at least an interesting point to bring up. But that's it for this episode. I hope you're enjoying. Be sure to hit that follow button if you want to continue this Digimon adventure with me, and I will see you next time. I make a TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 28, Blame It on Rio. And I'm going to be doing a lot more just explaining who Rio is than actually talking about the episode itself this time. Rio is a character who originates from the Digimon WonderSwan games, the WonderSwan being a handheld gaming console similar to a Game Boy that was around from about 99 to 2003 that never came to North America, and therefore these games never came to North America. He first shows up in Digimon Adventure Anode Tamer and Cathode Tamer, where all the Digidestined have been captured, and Rio's going through essentially the events of Digimon Adventure to save them. He starts with Agumon helping him out because the whole thing is about saving Tai, and by the end is joined by the other 7 Digidestined partners. He's taking on Devamon, Edamon, Myotismon, and Piedmon until eventually taking on Millenniummon. The game ends in a way that could be taken as this was all a dream, but there's a little bit of evidence that it probably actually happened. Making this presumably canon to the Digimon anime is when he has a very quick cameo appearance in Digimon the Movies, Our War Game section. He's one of the many kids emailing and watching the entire fight between Wargreymon, Melgarurumon, and Diabormon. He then even shows up a little bit in Digimon Adventure 02, where it looks like he's the one who was originally adventuring with Ken before Ken was hit by a dark spore. They go into more detail in Rio's time with both the movie and Digimon Adventure 02 in the 2 WonderSwan video games, Digimon Adventure 02 Tag Tamers and Digimon Adventure 02 D1 Tamers. And then there's the final game in the series, Digimon Tamers Tag Tamer. Important to note that Millenniummon has been his ongoing villain through all of these games, and in this game he finally gets his own partner in Monodramon. But by the end of the game, Millenniummon's making the point that he is meant to be Rio's partner, and Rio is forced to choose. The 2 Digimon, Monodramon and Millenniummon, end up fusing together, and that is how Cyberdramon comes to be. This is why he is so difficult to control, why Rio has to use more harsh tactics in order to be Cyberdramon's tamer. This is because it is his sweet Monodramon with Millenniummon's evil energy. These games even explain that there's essentially a multiverse of Digimon and give Rio the choice of going back to the adventure world or going to the Tamers world, which is how he ends up in Digimon Tamers. And thankfully this episode is very much about introducing Rio and how Rika doesn't like him because he beat her in a tournament. So because of this, I don't feel bad basically spending this entire video just talking about Rio and not the episode itself. But that's it for this one. If you want to continue this Digimon adventure with me, be sure to hit that follow button, and I'll see you next time. I'm making TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 29, Goliath. First and foremost, I want to talk about this city that the Tamers find themselves in, this black and white expressionist designed city. I love this kind of blending of art styles like this. It looks so wrong in such a cool way. And more than that, I love that the humans are theorizing that maybe this is like an area where the digital world is falling apart, where the data is missing or something like that. And Terriermon's like, no, this is just normal for the digital world.
I wonder if the data in this area is unstable.
Momentai, this place is just another part of your friendly digital dimension. You're not in Kenzai anymore, you know.
I love that they've had some settings in the digital world that are completely unlike the human world. We have the clock world that Rika met Rio in the previous episode that I don't think I really showed because I was too busy talking about Rio. Similarly, in that previous episode, we had Takato and his gang ending up in this weird cube elevator thing that went through this more three-dimensional looking area. I love that it's playing up how much this is unlike the human world, but it also bums me out a little bit because we keep going back to the same barren desert. And the fact that that is the most prominent place we're seeing is kind of a bummer when we're seeing how much more exciting, more interesting places there are to see in the digital world. And thankfully, it's not that they're saying most of the digital world is this way. They're literally going in circles constantly, and especially in the first few episodes in the digital world, we know that it's true they're going in circles because they keep coming back to the flag. Speaking of the flag, Calamon's turned it into a cape. Calamon's trying to use his cape as a way to ask people if they have seen his friends, and the one he bumps into to ask about this is Beelzemon. And while very little happens in this scene, Beelzemon doesn't even talk. I think it's a very important scene for him because it's showing that he's not being taken over in the same way anyone else was when they were on Behemoth. Beelzemon is not in any way trying to attack Calamon. He is clearly in control of himself here. And then he just leaves, which is a great sign of growth from the time earlier on in the series when he was trying to beat Calamon in order to digivolve. And speaking of Calamon stuff, he gets really excited when he sees a ball of data to the point that he makes himself a nice little song.
I was having a yucky day, but now, woohoo, I get to play! Other Digimon were so mean, the nastiest you've ever seen! I don't need them, not at all! My brand new friend's a big pink ball! Running here and running there like a hyper teddy bear!
We get the title of the episode dropped when Rio uses the Goliath card on Cyberdramon, making him massive and destroying one of the Deva, but then Cyberdramon is shown to be too violent. He needs this. He has a bloodlust to him. So he and Rio have to go off to find more people to fight, and they leave the group. Bit of a bummer to see Rio go, but hopefully this means Rika will be back with them all soon. But that's it for this episode. I'll see you next time. I'm Big Kid TikTok for all 51 episodes of Digimon Tamers, and it's time to talk about episode 30, The Imperfect Storm. And first and foremost, guess what? They're going back to the flag. They are continuing to go in circles.
All right, it's settled. Let's go back to the flag.
Original idea.
At this point, I feel like it's an intentional joke, right? Like, they're giving kid logic to it, which makes sense when you have kid main characters, but I gotta imagine the writers are doing it for the joke more so than this kid logic. In other exciting news, we get the name of the little guys that Calamon has been making friends with, the Diginomes. And when the Diginomes answer Rika's wish of trying to find some water, she ends up being swept away. But thankfully, Calamon's there to save her. Calamon actually saving someone feels like a huge deal. Like, he's just such a little guy and he did it. Plus, we just get this great little reunion.
Where have you been? We searched everywhere. I'm not sure I searched everywhere, but I tried.
And then we get a much bigger reunion, because pretty much immediately after that, those two and Renamon are shot up by a geyser and almost immediately find the rest of the group. That means after 6 episodes in the digital world, they have finally completed their mission of finding Calamon and could go home. Assuming nothing goes wrong from here. We get some interesting things from the human side of the world, such as the fact that Susie apparently got a homemade Terriermon toy. I don't know if the idea is that she made it or her parents made it for her while Terriermon's gone, but I absolutely love this. It's adorable. Hypnos is continuing without Yamaki, and Yamaki and Riley are probably hooking up. They're having breakfast together in his place. And when Hypnos turns on Juggernaut, we finally see what this thing is doing to the digital world side of things, kicking up these giant storms and just disrupting the entire place. But it's only when Juggernaut is on that Takato is finally able to use the communicator that Yamaki gave him, which is an interesting complication that they need to do this absolutely terrible thing to make their only means of communication work. And then there's Beelzemon, who finally talks in this episode and gets in a fight for the first time. Now this is interesting because we see him fight specifically Informon. Though Digimon the movie is not canon to Digimon Tamers, there's some interesting connections we can make here. The fact that they're using Informon is probably not just random chance. In Digimon the movie, we're seeing just how powerful Informon is, taking on 4 Digidestined all at once. So Beelzemon being able to take him on with such ease is showing us just how powerful Beelzemon is. But his debt's coming due and he has to take on the Tamers, so he goes to do it, but hey, Juggernaut's activated again, and he leaves to stay safe. Katuramon takes Calamon, so once again, the Tamers gotta find him, and oh no, Henry, Terriermon, and Takato all end up inside of the data streams and are taken away. The group is separated once again, and they gotta find each other. Are they just gonna circle around the flag some more? I guess we'll have to wait and see. If you're enjoying this and want to follow along this Digimon adventure with me, be sure to hit that follow button, and I'll see you next time.